Sometimes in not doing things, amazing things happen. But establishing more routines and more habits in a way that's something that even if you vary, right, you veer off, you go out, you go for the holidays, you go on a trip, or that are easier to fall back into is really important to me. I used to just drive and drive and if I wasn't getting a good result, I was not very nice to myself and I would just drive harder. And I've learned to sort of throttle up and throttle back. And sometimes when I throttle back and I'm like, I don't know how to get past this growth problem, and literally watch and just be right in myself and believe that that's going to happen no matter whether I make it happen or something. It's easy to decide it's all up to you, but sometimes I'll realize that it's really up to a lot more than me.
Welcome to Builders, the podcast for impact-driven leaders who are done carrying it all and ready to scale with clarity, strategy, and freedom. I'm your host, Alex Snider, strategic growth architect, creator of the CEO Recode, and second brain to leaders who are building brilliant companies without sacrificing every ounce of their time, energy, or sanity. Each episode, I sit down with bold leaders who've rebuilt, recalibrated, or redefined what it means to lead well and live well on their own terms. We talk messy pivots, leadership upgrades, tactical wins, and the deep personal work it takes to build a business that actually works for you. If you love the episode, make sure you follow, rate, and share it with another leader who's building big and wants to build smarter. And if you're listening and thinking, damn, I need someone in the guts of my business with me, let's talk. Book your free business breakdown call using the link in the show notes. In 30 minutes, I'll help you pinpoint where blockers in your time, team, or strategy are silently stalling your growth and define 2 to 3 high-impact shifts you can implement now to regain traction and build momentum. Now, let's dive in. Let's build it better. Christian, welcome to Builders. Thank you so much for being with me here today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Today's conversation is going to be very interesting. You are at the forefront of the convergence of cause and commerce. You've said that you see social enterprise founders as the superheroes of a new era, and you've really built the scaffolding for their rise through your company, Instant Nonprofit. So I can't wait to dig into this, and as always, I'm going to ask you in your own words, because I can't possibly do you justice, who are you and what are you building?
What I'm building is a platform for good. We're in an era where, as you said, there's a convergence of what I call cause and commerce. And it's really where more and more today, people want to have their values reflected in all the things that they do and all the choices that we make, especially in the age of AI, where really so many things are going to become commoditized. We want to associate ourselves with the people and the product services and the daily actions that we take. We want to have those associated with our values more than ever. And so as I build a company that is inherently helping people do good, right? Starting nonprofits, generally charitable activity, helping either people, the environment, animals, etc. Um, but it's more than that because this is not just about dispensing a service. There are other companies that at least purport to do what Instant Nonprofit does, but it's how you do things that's important, right? And we've all seen that. We can go about our daily lives, go about our jobs, but it's like, how are we showing up in the world? How are we showing up at work? How are we showing up in the things that we do that are even mundane? And people want to do things more intentionally and more aligned with their values. So it's been very important to me to build a company that has an ethos that fits doing good and being all that we can be to help elevate people in all the ways that we possibly can.
I love that. And that aligns so strongly with my view of the world and impact being such a top value for me. So I was so excited to have you on here and talk about your journey. And then obviously we'll get into the nitty gritty of, what you need to know if you are starting a nonprofit. I always want to go back, take us back to your journey, a little bit about, what shaped you to who you are today. And also, I always am curious, how did you know you were meant to be a builder?
When I was about 8 years old, my mom had taken my little sister, who was almost 4 at that time, to the doctor for some evaluations because she just wasn't developing verbally. And there was nothing physically wrong that or apparent, but it turned out that she's developmentally disabled, what we called mentally retarded back in the 70s, and whatever label they want to put on that next. It would just mean that she wouldn't develop like the other kids, and she's still at 50, in her early 50s, nonverbal, but one of the more intuitive and definitely uh, best humans I've ever met. She's fully present with what's going on. She's honest. When she's excited to see you, she'll give you a big hug. And when it's time to, when she's tired, she'll turn my shoulder toward the door and say bye and give me a hug. And you kind of wish that all your relationships, right? That people were just this honest and able to just sort of communicate what's going on in such a cool present way. But you throw the ball to my sister and you've got a friend for life. And I think I grew up with this general assumption, right? That when people have a special need or there's something that could enhance their lives and help them be all they can be, that people would just gather around and sort of make that happen. And I didn't have any other childhood to compare mine to, right? So I growing up around Special Olympics was really neat because you're just surrounded by all these people and this positive energy who are there to make really a world-class organization around these kids with special needs. And I think, even as I went through elementary school, back in when I went to school, they were mainstreaming kids that might have been put in an institutional school before that. And I got suspended from school for fighting, my first fist fight in third grade. And it was because some of the kids were making fun of the special kids in the hall. And I, told them to stop. And as third grade boys might do, we graduated from a conversation to something a little bit different. And I think this was just out of this sense of wanting to have justice for people who are not, advantaged, right, or need some help in whatever area. And I think I've just carried that through my life, and realized that that's a universal story for everyone, right? We all need some support, some love, some instruction, some guidance at different points in our life. And later when I was in college, one of the I had several goes at college. I kept starting businesses in the background, and but I during the fall of the Soviet Union, you suddenly had hundreds of millions of people without government services, and most people can't imagine that scenario. And what happened was NGOs, right, nonprofits from all over the world rallied around and provided all these services in the literal collapse of an entire societal, structure, governmental structure. And I was supposed to do a 15-page paper on that, and it ended up being 42 pages. And my professor loved it. He was actually grew up behind the Iron Curtain in Poland, and he gave my paper to a PhD student to do further work because it was really, a quality paper. And I just remember being intrigued that people would voluntarily come around, all of these millions of people that needed this support, and just find out and innovate, find out what solutions they needed. And I just thought that was a really remarkable moment in history, in the wake of, such a major shift. So I think I've just always been intrigued by that. And later I went to start a nonprofit, and I just became a little morally outraged about how difficult it is.
Yeah, wow. What defining moments, the Special Olympics, this moment in your, professor relationship with you and the historical context. It really seems like those defined you. I know a little bit about your experience starting your first nonprofit, and there is a tenacity that is unparalleled in your willingness to go through it and then turn around and realize that. I love what you said. I think it was crafting a love letter to a bureaucrat was
Hmm.
really the ultimate outcome. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about how that experience was and what most people experience, and then I think that kind of answers the why this business, why now, right? Like, why did you then decide to take that experience and turn it into a service to help others?
Yeah, out of that sort of moral outrage, like why should it be so hard to do good versus start a used car lot or do anything else, right? We've all started businesses. Most of your audience has at some point started an LLC or a corporation or been a part of starting one. And it's relatively straightforward, right? Depending on the province or state you're in, there might be a slight variation in the process, but it's pretty straightforward. And so, but with starting a nonprofit, you have to establish the entity. There are a number of additional requirements and documents that you have to create because you're kind of being given a public trust, right? This is a tax exempt organization, so there's no tax on the corporate income. And there's also uh, tax deductibility for donations, right? So with that public trust, there's some expectations of transparency and some other things that have special document requirements and this tax exempt application that you basically 501c3 most there are a few other types of 501, but the vast majority of the designations are 501c3, what anyone would consider a typical, US charity. And that just has some rules and documentation and things, and then you have this tax exempt application. That's actually what is 501c refers to. People use 501c3 interchangeably with the term nonprofit, but it's really a nonprofit corporation, and then the IRS gives you a tax status that's bestowed on that corporation, and you have to go through an application process, and that can take up to a year traditionally to go through all the approval process. And I just thought that was outrageous and crazy, right? Why would you make people who want to do good like have to crawl over broken glass, have a really opaque process, and then not really know even where that was in the process? So am I getting approved? Is this going to get delayed? And so that's where that tenacity kicked in. And you know I think I grew up just kind of I always challenged why things are the way they are. I was a very inquisitive child, um and I just wanted to know what made these things so difficult, what the typical blocks were or delays, why people would get rejected. And so they sent me a form letter when I sent in that first application, and the agent was never there when I tried to call, of course. The bureaucrats are, you know, they call you, leave you a message. They're never there when you call back. So I changed the last couple of digits on that phone number and called about 40 or 50 extensions north and south of that number. And anyone I could get in the building, I figured they'd probably be in that department. And indeed, I was able to reach, a number of IRS agents, and I would ask them, why does this take so long? Like, what are the typical reasons these things are delayed and denied? And then a light bulb came on, and I asked, what would make your day? What would make it feel like someone actually cared about your job? Because they really have a thankless job. Nobody likes bureaucrats, and they work in an agency that's made this process so difficult. It doesn't make their lives it's not like the worker, at the desk, the end product of this apparatus, this giant agency. They didn't create the process. They're just trying to get through it just like you. So what if we could create what I call the love letter to a bureaucrat that would kind of signal to them that somebody actually thought about how difficult their job is and made it easier with a table of contents, chapters almost like a book, watermarked EIN, something that would make the going through that application so easy and signal to them that somebody, like I said, that somebody put some thought into their experience. And what resulted from this was agents would kind of cherry pick this file because they could see right on the cover page that this was one that would make their life easier, and sort of sneak off to their desk and stamp it approved. And I started getting very fast approvals. I got fast approval on my own. And then I helped some people in town. They had heard I got this incredibly fast, like 5, 6 week approval. And so they asked me if I could help them. And that was a project that they were under the gun with a donor that had a time limit. And we succeeded with that one, 5, 6, 7 weeks maybe. And from there, I realized, I probably have something here that I could turn into a process and really help a lot of people. And what better thing to do than help people who want to help people?
Amazing. I also love that because I think there's, EQ is so important. And it's not just how we have
Absolutely.
conversations, it's how we problem solve. And what I heard from you was something that I often talk about when I talk about, stakeholders and understand what's important to people. Now, the IRS agent probably did enjoy working on your file because it made their job easier, but they also have metrics, right? They get tracked on how quickly
Yes.
they can do things, how many
Oh,
things
yeah.
they're passing, how, whether they followed all their steps. And so you are really not only making it like enjoyable, not like laborious, but you're letting them shine when they get your files in the eyes of their boss, their department, their metric.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
so,
And yeah, that's been a huge part of the evolution of this company. And in my approach to life is if you can almost make it a skill like a sport, right? If you focus on the fundamentals in any sport, you're going to get better. You don't need to necessarily, study Andre Agassi's tennis, right? If you focus on your swing, your stance, some of the fundamentals. And so the fundamentals to me of business, because it's really just a form of loving other people. Great marketing and great product creation is really just a form of loving other people, because if you can get yourself and your own biases out of the way and truly come at this from the other person's perspective, you can create something truly great. I think Steve Jobs did this, right? He didn't just look at these as computing machines. He was like, how can we enhance people's lives? How can people enhance their own lives through our products? And that's really instructed everything I've done. So if we can constantly learn to look at things from other people's perspectives and get our own biases and perspectives out of the way and
mm,
make that a way of living, a practice, then dealing with your barista or dealing with, busy holiday shopping, right? And you're trying to get uh, your alteration done, like I did on this suit, same day, right? How can you appeal to that person and make them feel cared about, or understand maybe the challenges that they're facing, and solve one of them, right? Or at least let them know you're paying attention. That's going to make you stand out. And, not to use this in a manipulative way, but to use it in a way that just helps other people get what they want. And the great Zig Ziglar is famous for saying, you can have everything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. And I've just really tried to make that a way of, as natural as breathing. And that comes, with our company, our team. We've built a culture of love. I love Simon Sinek, so I followed a lot of his teachings and beliefs. And he says if you take care of your team, they'll take care of the customer. The customer doesn't come first. The customer isn't always right. It's the team that you start with, because that's your family. And if you bring up a great family with manners, right, and who respect other people and maybe shovel the snow off the walk for the little old lady down the street, that's going to take care of the community just sort of organically and naturally. And I really think that's what we built here.
I love that. And I think it's, how you approach problem solving, how you approach getting to an outcome, how you approach, like to your point, the order of operations, right? Like customer is most important. Well, the team takes care of the customer. So actually, the team is really
Right.
the most important with that aligned outcome in mind, right? And I really love the way you said, you can have whatever you want if you're able to help others get what they want, right? And that monetary or otherwise, I think is a fairly fundamental truth.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you talked about, EQ. Um, because like we have some internal values too that we talk about, like um refunds to raving fans, we call it. It's rare that somebody is upset, and usually when people are, customers call and they're upset, it's because we're dealing with multiple government deadlines and multiple government screw ups sometimes that we're not in control of. But whatever that customer is upset about, if you can hear and truly acknowledge and not resist what they're saying and find a way to validate them. People are just not heard in this day and age. And haven't we all called either Verizon or some big company and they just blindly repeat policy and you want to strangle someone? Because it's like, just hear what I'm saying without repeating the policy. And that would be great, right? And then we can get a lot farther. And so again, this refunds to raving fans. It's rare that we, even if somebody, and occasionally we do make a mistake. It's a mistake. It's rare, but whether it was the government or an oversight, in the office in the process, um, acknowledging people and then really listening for what they want versus just dispensing what you'd like to, what we can do or what our policy would allow really breaks through things so much that we often, people who engage with us enough to, complain or say that they thought that this was going to happen faster or whatever, even though we're incredibly fast and have, by far the fastest approval and fastest process in the industry. When we listen to people and really empathize and really use, a high EQ, those same people come back and give us a 5-star review. And it's like, that's even something that's even more important than just generally good KPIs or generally, meeting certain goals or growing, the top line or whatever, because that person's life is changed because of a caring interaction. And it's like, you're kind of putting a deposit in the bank of faith in humanity when you do that.
Oh, that's powerful. Yeah, I think you've touched on it so well. The power of genuinely listening and someone feeling heard. I think often the power of a question, and Simon Sinek talks about that as well. It reminds me, actually, I was on a call this week with now a new client. And I ask a lot of questions when I'm assessing a client. And I ask questions about a lot of things that might be beyond what you expect to talk about when we're talking about growing your business. But I genuinely want to understand, the impact on you and all of the things that are coming into this relationship that we're going to build. And so I asked a bunch of questions, and this, they shared, and I, appreciated them for sharing and, made sure that I was understanding their answers. And this particular client, I think there's a generational element. He's a gentleman, he's like 60. But he said, I think I shared more with you in the last 10 minutes than I have with anyone in the last 5 years.
Wow.
And I was like, well, now I just want to thank you even more because, amazing. And also, it helps me understand how open someone is going to be. And the relationship is really important for the work we do. But I also,
Hmm.
regardless of whether we end up working together, how amazing to give someone that experience. Like, I just was like, I was like, don't get emotional. It's so amazing to think, wow, that 10 minutes, he hasn't had that in 5 years,
Yeah.
because so many strong people are just out there leading and doing all the time and just not having a space for that.
Yeah, even when people think about, well, why would I want to start a nonprofit? And, this burning desire in their heart, right? Maybe they went on a trip and uh, worked, cleaned a beach, or they, went on a vacation somewhere and then actually left the resort and saw the plight of the people that live in Dominican Republic or something. And found this great fulfilling feeling in a little bit of service or in just stopping and listening to someone, listening to their taxi driver or something. And how can we tap into that all the time and just make that a way of living so that we're constantly giving them something that they might not get. When people go to start a nonprofit, just like starting a business, and a nonprofit really is just another type of business. It's just doing something good is the product. And often the people who are unintentionally the least supportive are family, friends, etc. Like, oh God, what are you up to now? Especially for people who are ideators, or people who have tried different things in their life and are open, right? Um, and so often the people that we want to be the most supportive in our lives, might brush us off or might not stop and give us that consideration. So if you can consider that you might be the spark in that person's experience, today or this week or this year or 5 years, um, just being open to that and being like, how can I serve in that way is a really important thing. So that's beautiful that you had that experience.
Yeah. I feel really privileged to get to ask people tons of questions all the time and hear what sparks joy, what lights them up, what worries them, what keeps them up at night. I genuinely really enjoy that. You just mentioned something about, ideators and innovators, and you also mentioned that you had a few goes at college, and because you kept starting businesses along the way. So, like penultimate builder, you're now, leading a team, running a business that's making a massive difference in the world while helping others do that. What are, those are amazing headlines. And as you said, it takes iterations to get there. What are the headlines that people don't see, or what's maybe behind the headlines along that journey that have really shaped you and shaped how you show up in your business, how you lead your team?
Yeah, even after I had started embarked on this particular journey, I had I ran into some issues in life where things just weren't working, and uh, eventually I sort of had a crisis moment right across my whole life. The company was not working. I had a lot of problems in my relationships, my marriage, etc. And I didn't realize like I had had some, unresolved childhood trauma, some self-talk, some things that really were dragging me down. And eventually I got to this point where I really broke down and had to step away from about everything in my life and, find a new way. And, um, you know, I call it an awakening. A lot of people have moments of crisis, rebirth, whatever you want to call it. But I'm super thankful that about 10 years ago, and just in September, a couple of months ago, I had that was my 10-year mark in having this sort of reawakening and rebirth. And I realized that some things that I had experienced in childhood with my dad, and some of the he had experienced abuse and his emotional abuse and physical abuse in his with his birth his father. And so uh, yeah, what happened was I realized that all of my cleverness and my ideas and even my hard work and my good intentions and all that stuff weren't quite enough if I didn't go and figure out what was causing me these rifts and what was causing me this incongruity in my life. And I'm so thankful that I did, because I really learned how to be a human, all over, starting about 10 years ago, and how to let go and how to truly love myself and accept myself. And even I learned about shadow work. I learned about all these things I had never heard of. And so I would say that the hidden headline is I actually have a pendant that I wear that I had custom made, and it says as within so without, and as above so below. And really, these businesses and these our families and all these things are a reflection of what's inside us. Any of us who have kids know how both exciting and scary and frustrating it can be to have the child be a mirror to you. They have these attributes of you, and to be able to take a look at those objectively and just say, does this work, or is this something that is, is there something impeding my ability to be open and to be kind to myself and all that stuff? I would be kinder to strangers my whole life than I was to myself, and I just didn't see that until that time. And so everything that wasn't working before that began working. And it's been a really remarkable journey to sort of see that as I would do this work to peel the onion and to become uh, more just conscious of how I was operating, conscious especially about how I was operating for myself. Things just started to work in a way that they never had before. And, money definitely follows, for me, follows that alignment. I was in a group called Wake Up Warrior for a number of years. I joined it very early, I was in Warrior Week 11, and a guy named Garrett White started that. And I went to that right at this time. I went to that Warrior Week, and I started to learn about some of these things I had never heard before. And there are a lot of principles I think that I was able to take from Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, and some of these other, books and really seminal things that are just like I'm so thankful that I ran across those and just started applying those and letting go and you know talking to myself in a much more kind, gentle way, and still demanding a lot of myself. I love to build beautiful things. I work really hard. I play really hard, but to be able to sort of let each day, be on its own and let that go so that I can sort of be open to new things and be able to learn more objectively without judgment has really made the difference. So I would say that's, as above, so below, and as within, so without would be the hidden headline behind a lot of what we've been doing and a lot of what I'm really thankful for in my life.
What a powerful experience and shift. How do you shift that into leadership and managing a team, managing a client, managing, stakeholders, investors? Are there things along that journey that are shaping how you work today and how or maybe just even like leadership myths that you once believed to be true and now see from a different side?
I would say part of creating a culture, a culture of love, a culture of acceptance, and we actually want people to be their weird selves, right? And be comfortable being who they are. So one of the things I love is like when and we have a relatively small team, but we really built something where by being, and vulnerability, so many of these terms just get so beat up, and Brene Brown's done great work on, authenticity and vulnerability. These words almost become just catchphrases, right? You hear them so much. But sharing your experiences as a leader in a way that, you know, without getting into too much information or Dramaville or something, sharing experiences so that people can understand you're making it okay in this space, you're making it okay in this workspace to sort of share what's really going on. That is where you kind of strip away that corporate speak, and the euphemisms and all the things that people do to keep others at bay because they're worried about judgment or they're worried about somebody using this information or whatever in a way that's not, beneficial for everyone. And we've had situations where somebody's teenage child is going through something and they're at the ER, and instead of giving the corporate line of, oh, I have a personal matter to attend to today, it's like, no, my son did this and I'm working on my laptop at the ER. And the other team just, rushes around them and fires them for the day and says, no, take the day off, and really establishes this like level of care and concern for each other, allows people to feel like it's a safe place to come to work. I mean, you're at work 10 hours a day. It's the you spend more time at work in most often than with any individual family member. So how can we create that familial feel and have it so that people are really comfortable, being who they are and, stating their needs so that everybody can take care of each other so that they're excited to come to work and they're excited to build what we're building. So that's completely separate from the awesome mission we have. Of course, I'm completely sold on our mission, but inside the company, you can do that with any organization, to create that sense of comfortability with each other and really getting to know each other, and then do little things like find ways for people to engage and interact. In every meeting we do that, and it's really worked out well to where um, that allows people to relax and to feel comfortable, and then that allows creativity. And it's kind of like I went to Burning Man for the first time this year. And the thing about Burning Man is the principles, the rules that everyone's there to voluntarily adhere to create a container of safety that allows the level of creativity that you will not see anywhere on earth. And to me, that's the most significant thing about that event is it's almost like the Bill of Rights and the Constitution has created the greatest, most prosperous country in the world for all our failings because it provides this safe container that people can then go, okay, I can really create and really
Mm.
be as much of myself as I can inside of a container without worrying about, uh, without worrying about like being exposed in a way that's going to be detrimental to them. And so if we can go around and kind of create these little petri dishes of love, I call it, and put people in those, then we could see a whole renaissance of creativity and joy and art and all those things and great products and services. It's no different. It's a creative process.
I almost hearing you talk as if it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and if you are creating safety, if you are taking care of some of the more
Yeah.
fundamentals, you are opening up the potential for people to be infinitely more creative and innovative and collaborative and resilient because they don't have to be on and
hmm
monitoring all of these more fundamental needs. Like that's such a interesting way of looking at it. I love that.
That's a great observation. Yeah, it's Maslow definitely because you can't have the next higher level without having that baseline of, food, shelter, water, right? Your basic needs, love, belonging, and then you can move up to these higher level
Yeah.
fulfillment.
You've got your safety harness so you can take the bigger jumps, bigger leaps. I love that.
Totally.
Thinking about, you've talked about the values are very clear of your organization, and, you have a very, very clear mission. You are looking to help other people setting up nonprofits that are doing good succeed. I would love to hear, I talk about, wealthy leadership, and it's really the concept that, success is defined by you, and success has different metrics for everybody. So it's really success on your terms. And, wealthy leadership, usually when I'm working with people, it's the fact that you want to build an incredible business that, is driven by whatever the values and mission are. And you want to be a healthy, mentally, physically healthy human. You probably have some connections in your life that are also important to you. And how do you, get really clear on those priorities and then have your calendar match them, right? So very fundamental term, but if I was to say, what does success in this chapter of life mean to you? How does that look? And then, has that changed? Are there trade-offs you're not willing to make anymore that, earlier in life seemed okay or were okay?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think earlier on, I was willing to drive myself a little harder, even though decided to be kinder to myself. I have a strong work ethic, and I sort of am more of a muse follower and less of a strict habits type of person. But as I move into the next phase of life, um, more routines and habits, and just installing things in a way that even if I vary, because I just never drive the same way to the office, twice. I don't put I put a different, leg in the different side of the pant every day. I just kind of don't really naturally habituate things,
Mm.
but establishing more routines and more habits in a way that's something that even if you vary, right, you veer off, you go out, you go for the holidays, you go on a trip, that are easier to fall back into is really important to me. And then what I found over time too, and obviously you have to have things put in place to be able to, um, take time off or to follow the muse a little bit more. But um, I've learned that sometimes in not doing things, amazing things happen. And I used to just drive and drive, and if I wasn't getting a good result, I was not very nice to myself, and I would just drive harder. And I've learned to sort of throttle up and throttle back. And sometimes when I throttle back and I'm like, I don't know how to get past this growth problem, or I'm not seeing the solution come in for some, goal or target. And, we're at a critical point. I've learned to just sort of throttle back sometimes and literally watch and just be right in myself and believe that that's going to happen no matter whether I make it happen or something.
Mm.
And I literally will watch incredible things happen that I cannot take credit for. And the right person will come along, the right situation will come along, or we'll just have this mysterious growth spurt because whether I put that input in 3 months ago and it took that long to come to fruition, or just something truly magical happens, I am literally witnessing miracles all the time. And more I've come to realize that if I can look for those miracles that have happened in the past and anchor to those, that's what gets me through those times where I just feel like, there's nothing more I can, or definitely nothing more I should do to try to push something forward, and that I just get to allow that to happen. And that's really been a big shift in sort of my perspective on how things work in the world. And, it's really fun because it's kind of mysterious, and it gives you this sort of faith that, it's easy to decide it's all up to you, but sometimes I'll realize that it's really up to a lot more than me.
I think there's also something we said of the interplay between patience and persistence, right? Like persistence to like do the thing and keep doing it, but patience to let things percolate and pay off, you
Yeah,
know? I liked what you said about sort of structure and routines, and I'm curious. I have a saying, I don't know, it might be attributable to somebody way back when, but it's sort of like fuck the rules. Like the rules are made to be broken, but structure actually will set you free. And so
hmm
I'm a big structure girl, and freedom is one of my top values. And I think sometimes people don't understand that nuance. And I think again, my definition of success. What I mean by freedom is choice, right? It's not necessarily a life that is particularly leisurely, but it is choice and
yep,
freedom of location and time and all these things of like how I spend it. And I'm curious, like, does that sort of resonate with how you've come to terms with routines and structures giving you what you need to be more flowy and muse focused?
definitely. Yeah, it's like optionality, right, is another word for it. It's like how many options do you have, is determined by often, ironically, it's determined by the structures that you've put in place, right? And if you have, great reporting, KPIs and things like that, um, they can be really hard to arrive at, and you have to kind of persist in getting that stuff in place. But once you do, it allows you to operate from anywhere and, much more readily drill into things and really understand how things are going in a way that frees you up to go. I'm about to do a ton of travel. And because I know that there's certain things that we've put in place, it's going to allow me to stay on top of things even when I travel, where before I'd be gone and then it would take me a week or two just to be able to tap into kind of where things were at.
What a
And
great
that
example.
translates to personal life as well.
Yeah, data is so important, and it drives decisions, which allows you to act. And the faster you can do that, the easier, the more easily you can monitor things. It's like a car, it's like you get to make the micro adjustments before you hit the rumble strip, before you hit the shoulder, before you go off the road.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that. So I'm curious. I always, when we talk about success on your terms, and what's important to you. What will you right now is the definition of looking back and feeling like this chapter of life was a success. Is there anything in your version that you think is controversial or revelational, or or that's really unique and misunderstood by a lot of people?
yeah. Well, I think we're coming into an era. we've seen it's kind of, I'm calling it an era of unmasking. Um, Whether it's the Twitter files and like sort of institutions that we've relied on, like, people are just unable to rely and they just don't believe in a lot of the institutions. And I think it's causing a lot of really psychic dissonance for people. Marriage, church, religion, your alma mater, your family of origin, um, the government, politics, the People's Party, people that think the things that people used to sort of moor their identity to, so that when the storm comes, they would feel, like they had some grounding and identity, are so uh, are have been so diminished in the level of people trust that people have. Um, it's a little bit of a crisis right now, I think. And so talking about some things that are controversial is not an option anymore. It's a must, I'm a free speech absolutist. We have to retain, free speech. The only reason for the Second Amendment is for when the First Amendment is no longer, effective. We have to be able to have dialogue. Um, and what's happened with, whether it's the algorithms tearing people apart or people able to sort of so um, granularly self-select to only hear their own opinions reflected back to them, right? Your feed is the things that you're interested in. But if your feed becomes so granular and so aligned with what you already believe, and you don't have any of your beliefs challenged, that can be not only dangerous to you personally, but it's dangerous to society, because then the other becomes inhuman, right? And we're seeing around the world, when people look at other races or other, um, sects or whatever, of religion, as dogs or as subhuman, or as it's too easy, if you're not exposed to the humanity of other people, to consider them as less than you or less than human or less than your group. And people nowadays, and we all run into this, where people are like, how can these people be, like this? And we end up feeling very separate and very balkanized. And so it's really important, I think, to advocate for things like the free market and distortions in capitalism, this sort of oligarchical corporatism that is emerging in the world. That's not capitalism. Adam Smith defined capitalism, and there's a moral component to it, right? It's not just about money. Yes, it's about money and the use of resources and the free will to be able to decide where to use those resources. But it's not, capitalism is not an amoral construct. There's a moral component that is inherently good. Capitalism has lifted the entire world out of poverty, and there's been nothing ever introduced to replace it that's even close. And when we've tried to impose things that take away voluntarism in society and impose a structure that, says, oh, we'll have this collective and we'll all be in a collective, but there's a gun to your head for it. We've seen how absolutely destructive that is. Same thing with free speech. It's really important that people are allowed to say things that we hate or that we strongly dislike, that we disagree with, because no, this way nobody can be the arbiter of truth. And if somebody comes out with an idea that isn't good or isn't, in your opinion, is not beneficial, then the solution for that is more speech, not less. And so I think we're seeing a decrease in some creative solutions in the world that could exist, because people's creativity is being suppressed. Because I mean, Europe is on fire right now. The UK is on fire right now because of trying to clamp down on people and suppress their ability to, make a living. Uh, they're being thrown in jail for taking a video of what's going on outside their own homes, and to be able to try to take, part in public discourse, and that's a really scary thing. So I think it's time to lean into those things, and for business leaders to decide what's important and be willing to risk. It's a risk. And so when people are really overly focused on whether it's going to take away 2% of their market share because somebody's going to not like what they have to say, and we shrink away from that, it's almost like selling your soul to me for that dollar. And it's a dangerous place to be, and we have to be able to talk about the things that we believe are important to maintain a society that we want to be a part of, because we can't all withdraw and just live in our little, not everybody can go, buy a farm in the countryside and, go off grid. We have to be able
Right.
to live together. We're a social species.
So it sounds like your definition of success is quite a lot larger than yourself and really about how you can, be part of society functioning, more healthily in the long term.
Yeah, and really investing in and understanding each other. And that has to come with discourse, and that has to come with freedom of travel and freedom of association, all those things that it's easy to take for granted, but when they start being curtailed,
Yeah.
we have to stand up and make a difference in that arena. So that's something I would say that is in my roadmap, right, for the future, is like, how can I participate in that public discourse outside of just helping people, do good through starting nonprofits?
Right.
And, that's one expression of something that I can contribute to the world, but it's like I'm starting to look at, okay, what are the other areas that I can um, participate in, like the public dialogue, and talk about things that maybe we're not exposed to in school, or we're not exposed to, somebody has to write the books, and somebody has to, you can't just leave it all to books that were written, a century ago.
Right. So you've had quite a journey. You've had these, moments that shaped you. You've, been through the ups and downs of business. If you were to look back, is there something that you wished you'd known when you were either scaling a previous business or in the earlier phases of instant nonprofit?
Um, it's hard to say. Like, it's become, I think, almost cliche to say, oh, everything happens in its perfect time, etc. Um, I just don't know that I would have the perspective that I have, that I'm really thankful for. I wouldn't sort of give up. I wouldn't wish what I've been through, some of the hard times, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but I also would not give up any of it. Because I think it was necessary for me to go through those iterations and trials and things to be able to have the perspective that I've got now. So I don't know. I don't know if I would do anything differently. Um, but I probably would want to have been a little bit more aware of my impact on other people, um, in a way that I wasn't maybe before, right? So I think that's not a bad thing to maybe wish for, but at the same time, not to have any regrets, because one of the one of the perspectives that's really helped me is to understand that everyone else is going through their own sort of evolutions and their own awakenings, their own realizations. And while you don't want to go around like visiting, harm on anyone else, and you want to, respect other people, and generally have a good experience, honor your word and everything. Um, we're all sort of part of sharpening the other person, right? We're all sort of knocking off the pieces of marble to make the David. When we bump up against each other, it's also knocking a piece of marble off of the other person. And I would never want to justify anything that's, wrongdoing or not honoring your word or whatever. You don't want to just kind of throw that away with a cliche. But at the same time, I've come to realize that these experiences, it's not just about me. Other people are also growing and learning through, misalignments, through things that don't work as well as things that do. As a matter of fact, we mostly learn through our failures, not our wins. The easy wins aren't a big lesson, but boy, those losses, or those things that don't work out and are painful, definitely stick with us more than the wins.
We struggle to value things that are easy. And I loved, I think what you really described a lot was self awareness, right? The self awareness of your impact on others, the self awareness of, the roles that we play in other people, but also that, things that feel hard, what they play in our development. I often talk about self awareness as a a really key leadership trait. I think, you can't, if you can't see yourself, then you can't lead yourself, and it's very hard to see and lead other people. So I love that. If
Definitely.
anyone in the audience is either thinking about a nonprofit, like, oh, wouldn't it be great, or has always had this idea in the back of their mind, or is just not even really sure what a tax-free vehicle is, I want to dig in because you are just a wealth of knowledge on a very, very interesting niche. So we've talked a little bit about what you do in terms of supporting the process being, fast, efficient, smooth, as painless as possible. 501c3, like, is that it? Are there variations? Like, where does somebody start to think about starting a nonprofit? What do they need to know?
Yeah. Anything that people would do that you would consider charitable or beneficial to the community is probably eligible for 501c3, charity, 50 nonprofit status, right? Um, there are a few different types of nonprofit. You might have heard of, chambers of commerce. You might have heard of a 501c6. That's the designation for that type of organization. It's more of a membership organization. The benefits are limited to the membership, not the public. But it's still tax exempt from the corporate taxation standpoint. There are a number of other types of 501c. 501c4s are more for issue advocacy, right? Activating constituents and helping them understand the impact of public policy and things like that. But the vast, vast majority, 97% or something, is 501c3, which is anything that you might consider where you've donated to a cause, you've been involved in adopting an animal. Those are all 501c3s, beach cleanups, um, things that bring community togetherness, community awareness. And what's really neat is 501c3s are great alongside of a successful business or a business that plans to be successful. For example, somebody starts a roofing company. It's not only good from a public, a PR perspective, and there's really, it's not why people start nonprofits. We've started thousands of nonprofits, and I don't know if I could count on one hand the organizations where I've done, thousands of calls, discovery calls, and I don't really run across people who are starting nonprofits for selfish reasons. Sometimes I do get asked that, but very rarely is it somebody that wants to, exclusively get tax benefits or something like that. Um, but there are tax benefits to it, and there are also public relations benefits. So, like I said, if somebody has a roofing company and they want to give back to the community, it's great for their workers. One day off a month to go contribute to a Habitat for Humanity type effort actually increases employee retention through the roof. We live in an era where there's very little loyalty to an employer. And so if somebody has, studies show that if an employer has a nonprofit component to the work, those employees will stick around because it's people want intrinsic value in what they do. It's extrinsic what you get paid, right? But it's intrinsic how you feel about that job and how you feel about your employer. And if you align as somebody on the team with your employer, with the business owner in values, you're going to stick with that business owner for many more years than you would otherwise if somebody wants to give you, another $10 an hour or something. So it's great for for-profit companies to start a nonprofit alongside of the for-profit and do your giving through that. Or if you go to a gala or a silent auction, or you participate in the community and you have, Alex Snider Roofing Foundation, and that's what you're doing, you're giving through, that reflects well on you as a human and on you as a business, that you're actually like participating and caring and stewarding and cultivating good in your community. And there's nothing wrong with that. Doing well while doing good is, that should be part of the formula. And so we start a lot of nonprofits for people who have for profits and want to give back to the community. And in some cases, it's perfect, even to help further the mission of the for-profit. For example, we've started a number of investment clubs, right? Angel investor clubs. And they can do all of their community activities, including the pitch fests and the education components of teaching angels to be more professional investors, teaching entrepreneurs how to pitch, how to create a great company, how to network, whatever it is. All of those community and education efforts can be done through a 501c3 with tax deductible funds. And then when the deal pops out of that, right, when the entrepreneur pitches and there are people interested in investing, that part of the commercial transaction is done inside of the LLC or the nonprofit or the for-profit of the investment group. So they really contribute to each other because anything that is community building and or educational can be done through a 501c3. So it's just one example of the application of a 501. And what we do at Instant Nonprofit is we have this done for you process where we get the information. You don't have to fill out your name 17 times in triplicate like you do with the government processes. We do that once. People spend often less than 20 minutes in our entire process, and we do all of the paperwork for you. We let everyone know exactly where they are in the process. And then once it's started, we put people on what we call autopilot, where they don't even have to think about missing a deadline or making a filing every year. We maintain it for you because a lot of the reason that people don't start nonprofits, whether they're a business owner or just a person who wants to do good, is they worry about those deadlines, right? Those bureaucratic requirements. And if those can be taken care of completely for you, in a way that's, guaranteed to not have you miss anything and only costs, a little bit of time, less than an hour a year generally, um, that removes a lot of the friction, it removes a lot of the anxiety about doing a nonprofit, and then people can focus on the mission. And that's really our mission as a company, is to help change the trajectory of the whole world, the whole planet, by helping people start nonprofits and stay focused on their mission instead of on bureaucratic paperwork.
I love that. I love what you highlighted there. And I want to make sure that everyone heard, you can start a nonprofit because you have an explicit standalone mission to do something good. And this is a vehicle that makes that, more financially viable. And then you can also have it be part of your business strategy for employee retention, for giving back to the community, for strengthening the values of your organization, for creating communal, associations or angel investing syndicates. All of those can be furthered by like a complementary nonprofit to your for-profit business. And I just think that that is probably something a lot of people have never thought about. So I just want to double down on what you were saying. And then, Christian, I mean, bureaucracy is what gets in the way of so many things. So what you guys are doing is truly incredible. If people have listened to this and it's sparked, curiosity or gumption for them, what's the best way to find you? How to, work with Instant Nonprofit? We'll obviously put everything in the show notes. What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, we have a great gift for your listeners. If somebody wants to find out more, we've boiled down exactly what you need to know prior to starting a nonprofit, whether you're considering it, just kicking ideas around. Um, if you go to instantnonprofit.com/podcast, we have a great nonprofit startup kit, we call it. It's completely free. No one will harass you. But we will be very supportive in giving you everything that you need to know about starting a nonprofit. How do you name the nonprofit? How do you come up with, your magic one sentence mission statement? What are the requirements? You need 3 board members. Can I be on the board and my wife or spouse be on the board? Absolutely. So we break a lot of myths because there's so much misinformation on the internet. Um, you know, there's it's just very simple to walk through what you need to know, what you don't need to know. Sometimes it helps to know what you can learn in the future after you start the nonprofit. Um, but to dispel some of the things that you might have heard about it being a nightmare to maintain, or that you can somehow get in trouble if you do something wrong. That's really not the case. These are self-policing organizations, just like filing taxes. Thankfully, it's still relatively self-policing there too, right? They take when you file your taxes, they accept the numbers that you put on paper, and they don't audit every single organization. And so the requirements to do these things are, reasonable, and we make them completely, seamless and effortless. So they can go to instantonprofit.com/podcast and get that nonprofit startup kit. Tells you everything you need to know. We also love to ideate with people, and you can book a call and talk to one of our, domain experts. We don't have a call center. We have actual domain expert, and for example, one of the main people that we have speaking with those who call started a nonprofit at $200,000 as an executive director, grew it to 3.5 million, and really has deep domain expertise so that I'm not, I've done thousands of those calls and I love to talk to people. But we want people to really be able to be heard and really be able to reason through the idea that they might have. And that's why, we're happy to book a call. There are a number of ways if you go to our website. All our socials are pretty much /instant nonprofit. So you can find us there as well. And we really love to just help people decide if and when something like this might be good for you. People gestate these ideas for 5 years sometimes, and they'll often reference a call that we had, years ago, and that now they're ready to start, or they were left some money by a parent and they want to honor that parent with a scholarship or something. All kinds of ways that people, I love how inspiring it is constantly to hear how people innovate in a way that's going to make the world a better place. And it definitely gets me out of bed every morning.
Beautiful. And thank you for, all those resources. We'll make sure we link everything in the show notes so people could just be one click away. Before we wrap up, we have a few rapid fire questions. You can answer in one word, one sentence. You can absolutely pass, and then we'll be done. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What's one decision that changed everything for you as a leader?
One decision that changed everything as a leader for me was I think I got into the trap of letting tools run the man instead of the man run the tools, right? Or let uh, software, for example, we tried to develop software and hadn't really focused on process. And so process is king to me. Um, Being able to understand what someone's experience is, whether it's on the website or whether it's in the fulfillment process, or even, um, you know, understanding my mom's helping an elderly relative and has to go through all these processes to get them the care they need. And instead of rushing to develop something to automate or whatever, especially in this world of AI, really thinking deeply about the process and the experience that the other person has. And we kind of touched on that earlier. That's how great products are made. It's how a great opt-in. It's how it's a great community. All of the things that you could do with that are really helped if you slow down and consider the process from the perspective of that other person.
Amazing. What does strategy feel like when you're doing it well?
I would say strategy feels like good strategy. It's hard to say. It's gotten to be more and more intuitive.
Yeah.
But if it's a strategy that can be, articulated into terms that um, can get sort of buy-in and understanding by anyone else that's going to come into contact with it, that's really important. So being able to take something that is like, if I think that there's a certain path that we could go down to arrive at a result, and if I can immediately articulate that into something that other people will understand easily, it's really funny. I might forget that feeling that I had when I came up with that strategy 5 days later when I have the time to implement it. So if I can explain it in a way that's understandable to anyone else, it'll probably even help me go, oh yeah, this is what I wanted to do, instead of that being having that elusive feeling like I know I was onto something, but I can't quite remember it because I didn't write it down from that perspective of universal understanding.
Is there a book, podcast, or person that really cracked something open for you?
Um, I would say, interestingly, right now I'm reading at Anti-Fragile by Talib, and that book, more than any other book I've read, and I've read a lot of books in the past 10 years, that one is so universal. It touches on so many different things that are sort of, tough nuts to crack. And it really brings into perspective a lot of what's going on in the world, and a lot of concepts. The very concept of anti-fragile is um, creating a processes and systems and a life or a business that actually gets stronger from being stressed, and that's really turned some light bulbs on to me. So that one, I can't recommend enough.
Love that. Just spoke on stage about how that played a role in our startup
Oh,
journey.
really? That's
What's
great.
something that you've said never again to in your business?
Um, in my business, never again. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I probably could do that in my personal life, but yeah, I can't recall anything right off the bat in the business. But I'm sure I'll think of it as soon as
All
we
good.
end
Yeah.
here.
If you had a free weekend and zero obligations, how would you spend it?
I would go to Moab, Utah, and I'd probably jump out of an airplane. Something that I did last year or 2 years ago that I really enjoyed. It was terrifying, but something I'd like to do again. And then as soon as I hit the ground, I'd get on my dirt bike and I would just go way out into those mountains. I love the Red Rocks of Utah. Dreaming of living there someday and having some property and being able to get on machines. I just love anything with wheels, and dirt biking out in Moab, Utah is like probably my favorite way to spend time. And it's too rare, so I'm due for a trip.
Oh, sounds like an incredible adventure weekend. Christian,
Yeah,
thank you for your time, your insights. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Builders.
I've loved it. Thank you so much.
That's a wrap for this episode of Builders, where we get real about what it actually takes to grow companies that perform without grinding you into the ground. If today's convo sparks something for you, here's what to do next. Follow the show, drop a 5-star review, and share it with someone else who's building big. Don't let it be lonely at the top. If you're ready for more clarity, more leadership freedom, and less of a duct tape and go growth vibe, let's connect. Book your free business breakdown call using the link in the show notes. In 30 minutes, I'll help you pinpoint where blockers in your time, team, or strategy are silently stalling your growth. Walk away with a personalized fix-it list that gives you the clarity you've been craving on what to shift now to regain traction and build momentum. For more tools, insights, and my no-fluff takes on leadership and scaling strategically, join the Builders Club, also linked in the show notes. You can also head over to leaderswhobuild.com, where you'll find all the links to Peep My Creds, see client wins, or just confirm that yes, I went to the gym today. Until next time, keep leading boldly, building smart, and living success on your terms.